Welcome to episode 176 of the Actual Astronomy Podcast. I'm Chris, and joining me is Shane. We are amateur astronomers who love looking up at the night sky, and this podcast is for anyone else who likes going out under the stars. In this episode, we'll talk about what we've been up to this week, including our observations of Comet A1 Leonard, as well as one final opportunity to get your name in the draw for the free 2022 RASC Observers Calendar. So, Shane, you have a thank you to send out first, and then we'll get into it.
Yeah. Before we get into any of the observing stuff, big thanks to Paul. He is a new Patreon supporter of the podcast. And as always, we thank all of our Patreon supporters. It really does help. And just thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much, Paul. We do really appreciate your contribution and any of the other contributions people have made currently or in the past, because if we don't get Patreon support, then we're happy to pay for it out of our own pocket. But this kind of helps to help guide our decisions. Like, we're making some decisions in how we're going to move forward with the podcast. Shane and I were just making some plans to do some testing over Christmas, and I think we're trying to create some better experiences for our listeners. So looking forward to it. So, how was your week, Shane?
Not too bad. Our weather here, Chris, has just been so like I won't like the forecasts have been so inaccurate. Last week when we recorded, one of my comments was, "Well, Chris, I know it's been bad, but the forecast this week looks really good." And I think I've said that like the last 2 or 3 Sundays in a row. And then like the Monday forecast comes out and it's now partly cloudy every day. And then the Tuesday forecast comes out and now it's 100% cloudy every day and snow.
And so did you see the forecast this morning?
It's supposed to be starting Monday. Clear
and sunny for a whole week.
Yeah. Beautiful.
And right now they say you can't predict the future, but I predict we will not be observing tonight because we are having a blizzard.
well, the snow is supposed to taper off by lunch, they're saying, and then it's going to get extremely cold. Well, compared to the current temperatures, I think it's like I think the high is -7 today, and it's getting down to 25 tonight. So it'll be a chilly evening, that's for sure.
That's -25 Celsius, yes. People, yeah. Just in Saskatchewan. One of the first things that you learn in the winter, and Shane's laughing because he knows what I'm going to say, is that they talk about the temperature without the negative symbol. And so I'm lying in bed listening to the forecast, and they're saying, and it's like -20 or -25, and they're saying it's going to be 7 on Saturday. So in my mind, I'm like walking around in a sweater or just a light jacket. I'm just about skipping through the daisies. And then Saturday rolls around and it's like -10. I'm like, but they said it was going to be 7. And then I started listening and I realized they just dropped that negative symbol because it's just implicit that it will be below 0.
It gets to that point in the year here where all of the temperatures are negative. So you might as well just not say that because it's extra words, extra syllables, but only call out the ones that are now on the positive side or are above freezing, which is, going to be rare. So yeah, that
and nobody
happens.
tells you this.
No, you just kind of learn it the hard way.
You learn it the hard way. You have many disappointing days but they said it was going to be warm. Yeah. But see, and the other thing is they will call it like warm because -7 in January is considered warm here, they'll call it even balmy. Like, and they're not joking. Like, I'll say it and I'm totally kidding. I call it bikini weather or whatever, but people here they're serious. Oh no, it's warm. It's warm. I'm like, this is not warm. You're still making ice cubes outside, right? No one's heading to the beach here, folks. It's just it's a slightly nicer day out ice fishing.
Yeah.
Anyway,
it's all relative.
I could go on.
Yeah.
All relative.
Yeah.
So
I did get some
observing. Good.
Yes, I did. So Friday night, I went out just in the backyard. It was the only clear night of the week. And I thought there's no way I am staying indoors. I am getting my telescope out. And so I took out the old Tasco 76 millimeter, like F16 or whatever it is, F15.7, I think. and trying to think what eyepiece. I was using my 24 millimeter panoptic, and it was really, really bad seeing conditions that night. Like even at even at that low power, it was really like especially bright stars, I was not getting them as like pinpoints of light. They were just dancing. At first I thought it was just the telescope had to cool down, so I gave it about a half an hour. It improved slightly, so some of it was just the cooling of the scope, but it was so bad up there. There was a pretty strong wind out of the west. I was completely sheltered by the house, but anytime there's a wind out there, that usually means your seeing is not going to be very good, and it certainly held true that night. So really, I didn't have a very long session. So I played around a little bit in Perseus. I did have a quick look at Jupiter. Really was not able to see much detail in Jupiter other than just sort of faintly making out the two equatorial bands and of course some of the Galilean moons. But that was kind of it with the telescope. So then what I did is I took out my, it was a night of retro gear. I took out my Bushnell Rangemaster 7x35s and just sat in the chair, and that type of seeing, excuse me, using a telescope is just, in my opinion, frustrating because it just amplifies the poor seeing. But you can get away then with a binocular session and have that be quite enjoyable. And those are very wide field binoculars. They're 11 degrees. And again, I was panning through that eastern sky, through Taurus and Perseus, and quite enjoyed it, actually.
Cool.
Then Saturday morning, I woke up at about, 5:30 with the dog. And I was going to take a telescope out, but, and I think you're probably going to talk more about this. There was like I could see some of the brighter stars, but it was apparent that we had some high altitude cloud. So I just didn't bother. I felt like it would probably not be too fruitful. So no attempts yet for me at A1 Leonard. How about you, Chris? Did you get out and see anything?
Yeah, I get out a few times. I saw something a couple times. So my AZ GTI mount came back. That's kind of like the big news on my gear this week. Mm-hmm. And so it this is a mount that you can stick on just any kind of photographic or whatever kind of tripod you have that will take a photographic screw head or whatever. Anyway, so during the summer, actually, I think it was like the Labor Day long weekend, you and I were observing together, Shane, and I'd been using this mount for 1 year and 1 day, and the azimuth axis bound. And we took a look at it, and it was beyond our level to comprehend and fix. It was going to be a major fix and possibly something we couldn't fix. So we put it back together, and I sent it off to Skywatcher. Down in the States, they sent me and they don't know that I'm reporting back on this on the podcast either. I should mention that they're not like a sponsor or anything. And they sent me a tracking number, no cost. I shipped it back to them. They said it would be 4 to 5 weeks before they worked on it. 5 weeks later, I sent them an email. They sent me a tracking number. It was on its way back. And then, it took about a week or so to get back here. And so I put it on a tripod as soon as it came in and fixed. No problem. It actually works. It actually works much better now. So I always thought it was pretty good with a few little wonky bugs, and I've kind of reported on that. And I think that, what they did is they upgraded it to the latest firmware, and they fixed the binding that was in the azimuth axis. And I think they kind of greased and oiled it properly, because when it tracks now, it is like you used to be able to hear it. And when you would slew it, it would make quite a bit of sound. And now it's very, very, very quiet. Like even when you slew it, it makes some sound, like you can definitely hear it. But I think that those bound gears were always bound. And I think that they did an awesome job of kind of fixing it up for me. And, again, they covered it under warranty, and they were really fast at replying to any of my emails. And I was really impressed with Skywatcher. I've always liked a lot of their gear before, but I never really had any problems with any of the Skywatcher gear that I've bought. I've had Skywatcher mounts and telescopes and looked through lots. So this is the first time I had to kind of contact them and say, hey, look, I have a problem. And they took care of it. I was super impressed. I couldn't recommend Skywatcher and their customer service and their actual physical service on the products enough. So I just want to put that in.
That's awesome. So is your phone able to connect to it again? Because I think you lost that ability as well with the I don't know, I guess first version of this thing.
Yeah, I did. I actually had fixed that prior, but I literally I fixed that problem and ran into this other problem almost immediately. So it kind of may have got meshed together. But yeah, I had fixed that. I forget what I did to fix it, but I had fixed that connectivity issue. But and it could have even been related, because with those gears binding like that, that was causing several issues. I'll put it that way. It turned out, and they kind of ran through them when they wrote back. I'm like, yeah, I was experiencing these other things too. And so anyway, they actually went above and beyond and really went through it in a very thorough and detailed manner. They really did like an analysis of it and made sure when it came back, it was like perfect. And honestly, it's really, really nice. So now, I put it on Jupiter, and I didn't even have it remotely leveled. I'm on my driveway. My driveway, as you know, Shane, has an angle. I had a tripod on that. I just kind of level it good enough that the telescope's not too out of balance. And I pointed at Jupiter and set it to track 143 power, and no problem. Like, it stayed right almost dead center field of view at 143 power for half an hour. So I'm going to call that a success, because honestly, I probably wouldn't track things much longer than that. And I'm going to say this, after half an hour, it wasn't moving appreciably out of the very center. I'm going to say it was dead center for at least half an hour, and then maybe was moving off just a little. And this was no alignment, no leveling, nothing. I just pointed on Jupiter and said, track it. That was it. So I did absolutely nothing. So that mount is really working quite well. Before, when I used to do that, after half an hour, the planet would probably be on the edge of the field of view. But honestly, I was satisfied with that level of performance. If I leveled it and took some care in the alignment, then yeah, I could get it pretty centered for half an hour. So I'd be really curious to see once we get some better nights, what happens when I actually take it and center it properly and go through a proper alignment procedure. But right now, as is, I think that's pretty awesome. So you take the mount out, you throw it on a tripod, just like you do with a regular Alt-Az mount. You put your telescope on it. You can point at an object and say track, as long as you know the object that you're pointing at, which like people like you and I are going to know what we're pointed at. And then it's going to track that perfectly. And honestly, I'm good at that point. I'm as happy as I could ever be. That's working beyond the expectations I ever had for a little tracking mount like this. So very, very, very impressed. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's exactly, what I would want in an AZ mount that tracks. Just, I don't want to have to go through the alignment procedures, to be perfectly honest, because that's just, I don't know, I hate that stuff. It's a pain. But if I could just point it at something manually and then say, okay, keep that in the field of view, that's what I'm looking for.
Right. And we're not doing, because you and I aren't, well, you do a little bit of astrophotography, but I'm not an astrophotographer at all. And this mount, I mean, although people have used it for astrophotography, I've seen this online, so that's how I know that. I've never tried it and probably never will. For just visual only, like this is how you need it to work. And so it's a really impressive mount in that respect. And I think the price is pretty decent too on it. I think it's better if you buy it in a kit with another telescope and either gift the telescope to somebody else, like that's what I did, or maybe you need that telescope for yourself, or sell it off and then recapture some of the difference. I think that's the best way to get it. And that's what I did. If you just buy the mount alone, it's a little bit pricey, but I actually think it's worth it. The thing works. It's very light. It does what it says it's going to do. You just have to be careful, because there are two versions of this mount, and I screwed this up. There's the AZ-GTE and there's the AZ-GTI. And the E, for some reason, they put out the exact same mount. It looks exactly the same, but it doesn't have this feature. You have to guide it to the object and then say to track it. And to me, that is like a feature reduction. So the difference in price on them is like $20 or something like that, I think.
It is a bizarre thing that they have two versions, and they're like so closely priced. It just doesn't make a lot of sense.
And then the versions that they couple with the telescope, this is what messed me up. I decided I wanted the AZ-GTE. I knew about this difference. And then I was looking at all these telescopes packages that you can get. Now, for some reason, the ones that you can manually guide and point are the higher power telescopes, and the ones that you have to, sort of use the hand paddle or the app to guide it, and you can't just push it around the sky, are the wide field ones. And to me, as an observer, that seems like it's gotten reversed somewhere along the way, because the high power telescopes are going to be the ones like the Maksudovs that they package with it, I think, are going to be the ones that people want to pretty much just use go-to with. Maybe you're in a bright city or something like that. To me, then maybe the GTE might make some sense, but it would be the low power 80 millimeter f5 acros that I'll just scan around the sky and then maybe track on Jupiter a little bit, and it doesn't have to be as accurate. Those ones, I think, would work better on the GTI. So anyway, that's where I get confused and end up with the GTE at first, but it was cool because I was able to test it out and realize this difference so I can explain it to other people. And then when I got the GTI to actually see the difference in the performance was pretty astounding for an extra $20. But yeah, anyway, that's just a little bit of a review, a re-review of the mount. And I was able to test out my Pentax 5mm on Jupiter that whole time. So that was cool.
And how was the new eyepiece?
The coatings on the new eyepiece are much better than the old coatings. I got to say that.
Really?
Yeah, it's definitely a step up. They're slightly newer. Now, some of my Pentax XWs are like 20 years old or so, or getting onto it. But the new coatings are definitely better coatings. Yeah, they're well-regarded eyepieces for good reason. I think, like, we went into this in great detail last week. We won't do it again today, but one of the few eyepieces that has come down in price and has gone up in quality, I think, with all the changes, like the bodies. So we actually talked briefly about the screw-up eye caps. Remember I said that none of my eye caps really screw up very well? Well, this one, I tested it out just because, and it's a little bit smoother than the other ones were. Much, much smoother, actually. So this eyepiece seems to work a little better. And just in comparison, the coatings, even though the coatings are truly excellent in the other XWs, I think the ones in the 5mm anyway, which is a new one by Ryko, are really the best coatings I've ever seen on an eyepiece. They are really that good.
Wow.
Yeah, very nice.
Cool.
Very nice. So I won't get into that. So let's see. Well, I did get some observing in. I was setting my alarm and I was waking up and I was going out and I was looking at clouds in the morning to try to catch the comet. So the comet right now, Comet A1 Leonard, is, it's been coming down through Comet Berenices, just sort of to the right or to the south, the east and to the southeast of the handle of the Big Dipper. And it's coming along and it's going to cut just above or just to the north of Arcturus. And then it's going to get to the horizon. And then it's going to come up into the evening sky very quickly, like pretty much like right at the same time. So I was getting up and I was going out, and from my back deck, I can look up and I can see the area of sky it's going to be in. And one morning I could see the stars, I could see the handle of the Big Dipper, could probably see like third magnitude stars, but there was a lot of high cloud, and I panned around with my binoculars. There was no chance I was going to see it, and I was kind of disappointed. The other couple mornings I looked out were complete overcast, and then Friday was rolling around, and I could see Friday evening was going to be really good, and there was a chance it was going to be clear in the morning. And I was like, oh, this is like a really bad decision. I just got my mount back, got it working, got this new eyepiece. I really wanted to go out and look at the planets, but I decided that I would kind of sacrifice the Friday evening for a worse sky in the morning, and maybe not even getting any observing in, because there was a chance it was just going to cloud. Well, it was going to cloud back up, but whether or not it would cloud up before I saw the comet or not. So what I did is, on Friday night, I packed up all my gear and I put it by the back door. And then what I did is set my alarm and went to bed early and got up at 5. And so I was at my observing site, which is about a dozen or so kilometers away, less than a 15-minute drive. And it's on a really good night, it's not quite magnitude 6, but it's close. It's like 5.8, 5.9, and there's no lights in the immediate vicinity, so you can get dark adapted. And so I set up out there, took my binoculars out, could not see it in the binoculars. And then I had taken out my ST80, which I haven't really used that much, but I wanted to see how the doctor worked in it. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to see how the Masiema worked in it and see if I could find the comet. So I put the Masiema in there, and I pretty quickly snatched up the comet. It was pretty bright. We had some high haze, mm-hmm. and there was some cloud floating around, and actually you could see like a pretty big band of high cirrus right where the comet was. But even through that, I could actually see the comet in the 80 millimeter scope.
Yeah. That's impressive.
Yeah. It was cold out. It was minus 12 Celsius.
Mm-hmm. So were you able to see nucleus, tail? Like what were some of the features you were able to pull in?
Yeah, so I found it in the 32 and kind of then, went up to see M3. I could see Messier 3, which is a globular cluster that had just passed like the day before. I was really disappointed to have missed that, but I'd gotten up, but there was no opportunity to see it because of the cloud. But yeah, so I went back to the comet, and I could kind of detect a bit of a tail, and I wanted to see what I could see as far as structure is concerned. So I put the 12.5 Doctor in. So that took me from, I think, like around 12 or 13 power to about 32 or 33 power. And at 32 power, I could see a little bit of a coma and a little bit of a tail. So it seemed like from time to time I would get almost like a bright spot in the middle, and definitely I could see almost like a triangular shape. So it was, the comet, and then the tail was pretty wide and blunt, is what it looked like to me visually anyway, which is not how it seems to look, in the astro images anyway. It seems like the comet is a little bit longer, but I think what I was seeing there, like if you look at any photos online, there's kind of like a brighter bit very close to the comet. And if you kind of, sort of look at that really, really bright part, you'll see it kind of looks more like a triangle. Then there's like a really faint spot, really faint tail coming off of that. So I think that's, that's what's getting picked up in the astro images. So yeah, it's a little bit different visually than it is through the telescope. But yeah, I was pretty happy to be able to see it. And there's very little snow in the fields. So I went out. Now there will be snow in the fields. We've gotten about an inch or two of snow already, but hopefully it's not enough to impede my access to the site that I like to use, because nobody goes down these roads that I go on, and they're not maintained in the winter, I don't think. But it should still remain good enough to get out there. So yeah, but I'm sure, Shane, that if the clouds weren't kicking around, I'm pretty sure you'd probably have been able to get it in your binoculars, although you're looking back towards the city in that direction. But from a dark site, definitely it would be really, really easy in any binocular. And from a super dark site, I don't know. I would think, it seemed like it was on the verge of maybe it would be naked eye from a magnitude 7 dark sky site. If you're able to get to one, I think somebody probably would be able to pick it out.
Well, did you see that sketch from Eric that I sent you a link to this morning?
Oh no, I didn't see that yet.
So Eric is from Calgary, and he's a listener of the podcast. He didn't send this directly to us, but Larry McNish tweeted it out. So Eric the caption is, Eric drove a long way to find an unclouded sky, braved freezing temperatures, and set up a large telescope in the dark so that he could sit and sketch Comet Leonard near globular cluster M3. Here's his wonderful result.
Oh, cool.
So check out our Twitter.
I didn't get that from you.
You didn't get it?
No.
Oh,
Okay.
I'll send it here. Anyway, it's incredible. And if anybody's interested, just check out our Twitter feed and you'll see the retweet there. But I'm not sure what telescope he was using. I'm not sure how large it was, but this sketch is quite incredible. And I can only imagine the view. I'm definitely living vicariously through Eric's eyes here to see M3 and the comet like that. It's just beautiful. So just sent it to you, Chris.
Yeah,
that pops up.
I'm just looking at the sketch on here now. Yeah, so he was able to kind of get more of that wispiness of the tail. So that must have been a few nights ago, maybe, that he went out to do that. Yeah, very, very, very cool sketch. Yeah, I'm just looking at it now. Almost looks photographic. Yeah,
it does. Yeah,
photographs. Yeah, it's very.
Like he even has some color or a little bit in the stars in M3. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's excellent. I think for some reason is his telescope. It's like it's at least 16 inches. I'm going to say, or bigger. Maybe it's 18 inches even, but I think it's at least like a 16 inch. So, but yeah, that's a neat sketch because I'm guessing that's his lowest power, or it's a combination of sketches. Very nice, very cool.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. So before I go down too much of a rabbit hole there on the cold, we're going to do an episode on cold weather observing next. But next weekend, Shane, if it is clear, if the weather forecast holds for a change, eventually they'll get it right.
Maybe.
I think we're going to have a unique opportunity with Comet A1 Leonard because of where it's situated in the sky and where we're situated in relation to the sun. Because according to my astronomy software, we'll be able to see it equally high in the morning sky and then about equally high in the evening sky for, I think, a few, maybe 3 or 4 mornings and evenings. So it's sort of a rare opportunity for those of us living, I think, probably around maybe, who knows, like 45 to 55 degrees latitude or something like that. I haven't run all the analysis, but at least for us at 50, it looks like it's going to be, I don't know, like 7 or 8 degrees high and possibly 4th magnitude or brighter. And then that's going to be in the morning. And then in the evening, it's going to be about the same because it's close to the sun. But I guess where it's positioned, kind of like above the sun or whatever, then we're going to have this sort of unique opportunity because the sun is so low here where we are anyway. Probably if you went too farther north, it's going to be below the horizon because of where it is in Ophiuchus. And then if you go too far south, of course, probably that angle is going to be enough that you're going to have the sun still in the sky because it's not going to be dark all the time like it is here. Pretty much that's what we're facing, is that we've gotten whittled down to only 7 or 8 hours of sunshine a day here. So we're just able to kind of have that dark sky opportunity both in the mornings and in the evenings right now. So that's something I'm calling to people's attention. If you live in areas, just run your software and see.
Yeah, I'm really excited for it. And I imagine once it becomes an evening object, we'll probably see a flurry of observations. It's just, more people are up around sunset than sunrise. And, hopefully the conditions allow us to get a lot of observing in of this comet because it is starting to look like it's meeting expectations of becoming a real bright object.
Yeah, I would have put it at about 5.859. So it's about half a magnitude brighter than what my software was estimating. But I thought my software was overly optimistic before. But I would have put it at 6th magnitude at the absolute faintest. And I think it was a little brighter than that. Like I said, I had those clouds, so it was really hard to get a fix. I really wish those clouds hadn't been there because I think like if it was about that, like it would have been on the edge of visibility for me, naked eye. And, where I am, I can simply say, it's close. I can throw everything back in the car and drive another 20 minutes and drop another Bortle scale and a half. So it's sort of like a weird situation. Just kind of keep driving in south from where I live. And if I drive for 3 hours, I'm in a completely dark sky, but it just gets kind of ridiculous after a while. But I can sort of, if something's on the edge of visibility, I can just say, all right, I'll just hop back in the car and go for another half an hour and get into a sky that's that much darker. So I think I might have done that even at 5 o'clock in the morning, but anyway.
Cool. Well, I'm excited for it.
watch out for the animals. I almost hit a rabbit on the way home on the highway. So,
well, it's part of the challenge, I guess.
So we have some listener emails about the Comet, Shane. We've got one here from Charles. Did you want to take a read?
Yeah. So Charles said, I've been following Ceres Trundle across the Hyades every clear or mostly clear night for the past couple of months. There were two wonderful conjunctions early on. The first one was when it moved to less than 1 degree from M1. The second was with Aldebaran. It's been fun following its journey with scopes and binoculars. Early this morning, I observed Comet Leonard for an hour with my 120 millimeter refractor. The comet is bright and it shows a nice bright nucleus and a narrow fan-shaped coma.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was seeing.
Okay. Kind of a wedge.
I said triangle, but probably fan-shaped is a probably better description.
Okay. Carrying on with Charles' email, he says, it was much brighter than I expected it to be. Between 6.5 and 6.8 was the estimation. He said, I could glimpse it in binoculars as a tiny fuzzball until the present moon rose high enough to ruin the contrast. Even then, it was still visible in the refractor's 50 millimeter finder scope. M3 is about 6 degrees east of the comet and made a nice comparison object. The comet was considerably larger than M3 and nearly the same brightness. On Friday morning, Leonard will cross within 10 arc minutes of M3. That will be an amazing sight. And I think that's what Eric sketched. So that must have been Friday morning for him.
Yeah, maybe. I'm curious to see. Maybe Eric will reach out and get in touch. And so Charles was observing, I think this may have been like last weekend or early in last week. And he was sort of looking forward to that, but it had made a few different observations there. So yeah, that's pretty cool. And it was also cool that we heard from Charles, and we heard from a lot of people about their Ceres observations, Ceres being a minor planet between Mars and Jupiter. And I was kind of interested when we made that episode on minor planets, which is something I'm interested in doing a little bit more observing on. I've observed them in the past. I was quite surprised to hear from so many listeners. I don't know how many. We received a lot of emails about people not just making the observations because we had done it in a podcast, but I've been observing that for months now, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. I was really surprised.
I was too. And maybe it's just a bias that I have because I've never really spent a lot of time observing, the asteroids before. Or some of these minor planets. So maybe that's why I just assume that maybe, people don't observe them that much, but wow. Yeah, we got quite a flood of them.
Yeah. So definitely something about education there, I think, for us, and just like the different things that a lot of people observe that just, lots of us just haven't observed as much. Certainly we've observed them some, but there's people out there, like Charles, who will watch them when they get close to other deep sky objects and watch them move across. And that's really amazing. Very, very cool. So we have another listener email from Paul. Do you want me to go ahead with this one?
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So Paul wrote to us on December 1st about his Comet Leonard observations. He said, hey, Chris and Shane, really enjoyed your podcast episode on Comet Leonard. Thank you so much, Paul. I've been tracking Leonard since the 13th of November in a 70 millimeter scope and in his 10 by 42 image stabilized binoculars. Those are pretty sweet. Mm-hmm. So that's a neat combination. In the 70 millimeter scope at 20 power, 20x, it has a very distinct coma and almost stellar nucleus. On the 30th of November, I could start to see a tail in the binoculars, looking forward to see the comet brighten in December. And then he wanted to be entered in the calendar draw, which we have done. So yeah, that's really cool that he's been following it along since, the 13th of November. So he'll get a good month of observing on that comet. That's that can be a rare experience. So really good observations there from Paul. Thank you so much for sending those in. So the next one we have is Neil sent us one just on December 2nd. I think I just squeezed this in when I was making up the notes. Do you want to take a read of this one, Shane?
Yeah. So the subject is Comet C 2021 A1 Leonard. Had a shot at the comet this morning, Thursday, December 2nd. I'm not an early bird, and my plans for a 5 a.m. start were closer to 6 a.m. Still, the skies were only just starting to brighten, so it wasn't too bad. I'm in Edinburgh, so that's 55.95 degrees north, and my skies are a good Bortle 6 here.
Nice.
Yeah. So first with 10 by 50 binoculars, easy to find M3 just by scanning up from Arcturus, and the comet was about 2 degrees northwest from there, both easily fitting in the same field of view. What's cool about that, Chris, a little bit of a sidebar, somebody sent us a Twitter message asking if 10 by 50s would be sufficient. I said for sure, especially if you have a dark sky, and this just affirms that.
Yep.
So back to the email. So with those 10 by 50s, he said, I could make out the elongated shape of the tail very faintly with just a slight brightening of the coma. Then out with the ST80, which is, I guess, the similar telescope to what you were using, Chris,
yep.
which is pretty cool, or same telescope, really.
Yeah.
So ST80 using a 30 millimeter Plössl for a relatively wide field. The coma was visible with direct vision, and the tail, about 1 degree's worth, visible with averted vision. The sky was getting lighter by now, and I guess that if I got my arse into gear an hour earlier, the view would have been better. But still, a comet tail is always a win.
Yeah.
Back then to the binos, but by now the comet was getting quite hard to see. And then a follow-up observation from Neil. So this is the second one. I think maybe the next day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So another go with the 10 by 50 binos this morning. The sky was pretty clear. Could see M81 and 82 and just about make out M51. Excuse me. At 6 a.m., the comet was less than a half a degree southeast of M3, obviously brighter than yesterday, but not quite as bright as the globular cluster. Possibly a hint of the coma in the binoculars. Its tail passed right through M3. So made it hard to distinguish. Looking forward to seeing the images today. And that's it. So some great observations there by Neil. What I'm kind of liking about these last couple of observations too is just the back and forth between the binoculars and the telescope. And I think that comet observing with binoculars is a great way to do it, because often you'll get, a wider field of view. And sometimes the comet, especially when you have something like M3 in the near field, can really, frame it quite nicely.
Yeah.
And especially when you're scanning the sky just to even locate where it might be, the binoculars are really, really helpful for that.
Yeah, that's how I start with these every time, even if maybe they're a bit on the faint side, is use the binoculars. Sometimes as we have comets like this, they're brightening up. I think it's brightening up pretty quick. And so by using binoculars, you might be able to score it in the binoculars right away and then kind of go back and forth. As well, sometimes when you have the lower power of the binocular, you can pick up the tail or different tails a little bit easier. It gives you a different frame, like you were saying. Definitely the way to go.
Yeah, agreed.
And also, it was cool that he was using the little ST80, which is the 80 millimeter f5. Same scope I had out the other morning. These telescopes, although I think they're a little bit more now because of the all the challenges with shipping and logistics and supply and everything that we're all going through. But like I had picked mine up. It's not a real ST80. It's a knockoff, or other branded, I should say. It's not a knockoff. But I think I was able to pick mine up for $115 or something like that. So these are pretty inexpensive telescopes, and they're perfect for looking at comets because they have a very wide field of view, the refractors, so they gather a decent amount of light, and the stars are pretty sharp through them. They have some pretty decent low power, capabilities there. Yeah. So it's pretty neat. So anything else to add before we begin to wrap up this episode, Shane?
No, that's everything, Chris.
The only thing I want to add is that sort of looking forward to next weekend as we get into this week and early next week. That's when the binoculars are even going to become more handy because this comet is going to hug the horizon. being visible an hour or two only after or before sunset. So when it's close to the horizon like that, binoculars will work best. And as well, they're a little bit easier to look through, and it's easier to kind of scan along the horizon with them. And, binoculars like a 8x40 or a 10x50, or even larger if you have a tripod, are going to really get a good workout here. I kind of wish I had a pair of slightly higher power binoculars, but I'll just use my 7x35s and a small telescope. I think is going to hopefully make for some good views. But yeah, coming up next weekend, I think that for those of us that are, like Neil and us, living kind of in around sort of that maybe 45 to 55 degree area, at least, because that's the only areas that I've checked, I think that we'll potentially get an opportunity to see this comet in the morning and the evening sky if it does brighten up enough. If it doesn't, then it won't be visible. But it does create the right geometry to be visible both in the morning and the evening sky on at least a few days. I think maybe starting as early as Friday for some of us and going maybe into Monday or so.
Yeah. Hopefully everything works out.
Yeah, we'll see. I'll continue to set my alarm. I was going to get up tomorrow morning with all this snow now. We'll see. But minus 25, minus 33 with the wind chill is what we're looking at here. Okay, so just to wrap up the 2022 RASC Observer Calendar giveaway, we've had lots more entries, so that's great. But we're going to wrap it up. We're going to be taking entries until Tuesday, no particular time. But we definitely need to get this wrapped up the first half of the week so that we can make the announcement next week. And then so that we can make sure that we get them in the mail and have at least a hope and chance that people will receive them before the new year. And if not, they'll be arriving maybe as late as only the first or second week of the new year. And so that's it for this episode. Thanks, Shane, and thanks everybody else for listening.
Thank you, everyone, for listening, and we hope you enjoyed the show. If you are interested in more information, would like to contact us, or if you would like to support the podcast, check out our website, actualastronomy.com.